First, it was Brian Windhorst who connected the New York Knicks and Paul George, and now it is Marc Stein saying another trusted source has advised me to keep the New York Knicks on the list of Paul George destinations. We'll unpack that on today's video, but first, if you're watching, you should be subscribed. Analytics tell me that 50% of the people that watch these videos are not subscribed. So I kindly ask you to change that and turn your notifications on. That way you can join us this Wednesday and Thursday for our live NBA draft coverage. I want to see you there, so subscribe and make sure those notifications are on. You're watching Knicks Now by Chat Sports. I am your host, Marshall Green. Appreciate everybody for stopping by as we once again break down another Paul George report that has the New York Knicks as the destination. Marc Stein says, quote, another trusted source has advised me to keep the New York Knicks on the list as a potential trade suitor for George if the All-NBA swingman indeed opts in to the final season of his current contract at $48.8 million. That step would position George to push for a trade to another team. And where there is smoke, there is fire. And there is just too much smoke around Paul George in the New York Knicks for me to ignore. And I know you're going to comment, Marshall, you've already talked about this. Marshall, you did that. I don't give a shit. My job is to talk about the latest news and rumors that surround this basketball team. And I'm going to put my journalistic hat on, and I'm going to follow that trail of smoke, and I'll tell you this much. There is a reason that first, it was Brian Windhorst. And second, it was Brian Windhorst. And third, it was Brian Windhorst. But now Marc Stein, one of the most trusted NBA insiders, is speaking about it. And when you got two dogs as big as Windhorst and Stein, I think all New York Knicks fans should listen. Remember, Brian Windhorst was talking about it last week. He's talking about it again today. He said this morning, quote, Paul George could opt in and get traded by this weekend. That is something that is going to come to a head in the next day or two. So we've got Marc Stein telling us that the New York Knicks are a possibility. Windhorst has told us the past couple of weeks they're a destination. And now Windhorst is saying a trade could happen as soon as this weekend. Well, obviously, because Paul George and his player option, that deadline is set for July 29th. So we're 5 days away. It's almost like July 20 or June 20. It's June 29th. Excuse me. That's a typo on my part. It's June 29th. And you know what? That's this Sunday. That is this Sunday or Saturday. I can't even read. My head's all over the place. June 29th. This Saturday. Yes, if a trade is going to happen, if he opts in, it will be before that. Brian Windhorst, remember, said this about Paul George. Quote, the Clippers have not been willing to meet Paul George's price. He remains unsigned. You can't just look at teams with salary cap space. If Paul George changes teams, it's very likely going to be a situation where he opts in to his contract and requests a trade. The reason the Knicks make sense, if you want a way to deal with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, how about OG Anunoby and Paul George? Really the only reason I'm going to listen to Windhorst, because he hasn't been right since he said this, is he's rep by CAA. Paul George is rep by CAA. The New York Knicks are CAA. So I'm not saying Windhorst knows anything, but if there is anybody in the media that probably does, it is him with his connections to the same agency that runs the New York Knicks that represents Paul George. Of all the names being thrown around as Knicks trade targets, it does seem like Paul George is the most realistic. We've talked about Brandon Ingram here on the show. We've talked about Lauri Markkanen. We've talked about DeMar DeRozan. We've talked about other big-name players that are rumored to be available. Kevin Durant. None of them really seem to be available. But you know who might be? Is Paul George. And if I had to bet that if the Knicks trade for someone this summer that has made an All-NBA team, I think it's more likely than not that'll be Paul George of the Los Angeles Clippers. Before I give you my pros and cons of if the Knicks should do it, let me know. Should the Knicks trade for Paul George? Should they do it? Doesn't make him a championship team. I think at this point, you only do it if you are going to be a championship team. So should the Knicks trade for Paul George? Type Y for yes, type N for no. Coming up next, we're going to break down the pros and cons of a Paul George trade to the New York Knicks. I've got some interesting thoughts on that. But first, I got to give a major shout out to today's sponsor, Chubbies. Go to chubbyshorts.com/chat and use that promo code chat and get 20% off. The summer is here, and it is the season to wear Chubbies. All that information will be clickable in the comments and description of today's show. With summer here, our friends at Chubbies are bringing the good vibrations. Chubbies is a lifestyle apparel brand that makes every moment feel like a vacation. They say fashion is an expression of one's character, so why not let the world know you're down for a good time? For a limited time, Chubbies is giving our listeners here at Knicks Now 20% off your order with our exclusive code CHAT. Use code CHAT at chubbyshorts.com/chat. Chubbies offers a variety of high-quality men's apparel from super stretchy shorts and swim trunks in 3 short inseam lengths, pants, polos, and button-down shirts for when you need to hit up your favorite weekend brunch spot. Embrace the spirit of endless summers with Chubbies, the ultimate destination for bold, vibrant, and outrageously comfortable clothing. I'm someone that has always struggled with finding the right pair of shorts, swimsuits, and things like that, and that was until I got hooked up with Chubbies. Whether you're getting dressed for your holiday, a workout, or a weekend getaway, Chubbies has you covered for a limited time. Chubbies is giving our viewers 20% off your order with our code CHAT at chubbyshorts.com/chat. That's code CHAT at chubbyshorts.com/chat. That link will be clickable in the comments and description of today's show. Be ready to look good and feel good this summer with our friends over at Chubbies. chubbyshorts.com/chat. Use that promo code CHAT for 20% off. All righty, let's dive into it. Some pros and cons of a Paul George trade to the New York Knicks, because I think everybody can agree that Paul George is on the back half of his career, that there are some things that make you not want to trade for him. But I think when you just boil it down to, are the New York Knicks a contender with him? That kind of gives you your answer. And I think if you're able to trade for Paul George and you're able to hold on to Jalen Brunson, Dante DiVincenzo, Josh Hart, Julius Randle, Isaiah Hartenstein, and OG Anunoby, you're going to have the best top 7 in the NBA. I truly believe that. And I know people are like, Marshall, there's no way you could trade for Paul George if you're not included Randle. Marshall, there's no way you could make the money stack up if that happens. Well, I think it's possible. And a Paul George trade to the Knicks only makes sense if they keep their core 6 intact. Like, I'm not giving up 2-time All-NBA, 3-time All-Star, 28-year-old Julius Randle for Paul George. I'm not trading Josh Hart for Paul George. I'm not trading OG Anunoby, Isaiah Hartenstein, Dante DiVincenzo, or Brunson. I'm not doing that. The only way I'm adding Paul George is if I add him to the pie. If I add him to this team that's already here. Not taken away from any of the instrumental pieces to this roster. So I would throw up a trade like this to the Los Angeles Clippers. We get PG, you get Mitchell Robinson, you get Bojan Bogdanovic, you get Deuce McBride, and I'll give you 2 first-round picks. If you need 3 first-round picks, I would do it as well. If you need 4, 3 of them are going to be protected. But the reason I would be willing to add those picks is because you would be damn good. And you've got so many first-round picks at your disposal. At some point, these assets have an expiration date, and nobody wants spoiled milk. Knicks are already in a spot where they may have to make 2 first-round picks in 2024, and I bet if you put Leon Rose on a lie detector, he would tell you he did not want to do that. So maybe they trade out of it. But you got 4 first-round picks in 2025. You have 8 tradable first-round picks. If you trade 3 for Paul George, you still got 8 first-round picks in totality in the next 7 years. The New York Knicks can afford to pay a little bit more of a premium on that draft capital. And I know people are like, Marshall, there's no way you can make the money work if you don't trade Randle. There is no way you could do it, right? So I went to Fanspo, the #1 trade machine for all deals in the NBA. And I clicked Knicks, and I clicked Clippers, and I clicked Paul George to the Knicks, and I clicked Bogey to the Clippers with Robinson and Deuce, and told me it was a success. You know why? Because it's just enough money to make the deal work. And if you were to trade these 3 players and add the pick compensation to get it done, you'd have a roster that looked like this. Brunson at your point guard, Paul George at the 2, OG at the 3, Randle at the 4, Hartenstein at the 5, with DiVincenzo and Hart coming off the bench, with the ability to re-sign Precious Achiuwa, still have Jericho Sims on this roster, maybe a pick or 2 in this draft class, and ring-chasing vets will come and join this team. Maybe a guy like Kyle Lowry. maybe someone like Andre Drummond. If you have a top 7 that features Brunson, PG, OG, Julius, Isaiah Hartenstein, DiVincenzo, and Josh Hart, you're going to be the best 7 in the NBA, and you're going to be an attractive destination for veterans that want to come try to win a championship. A con of a Paul George trade is absolutely the age that he is and how much money he makes and how much money he's going to want to make in his future contract extension. Look, it's just a fact. He's 34 years old, and there's not many players ever, and as they got older into their 30s, they got better. LeBron James may be the only one there. 34 years old. I still do think there are valuable years coming up in front of Paul George. I think he's still going to be a primetime player till he's 37, 38 years old. But I'm just not so sure I want to pay him that max extension that he wants, which is 4 years and $222 million. And remember, the only way that he would come and be able to be traded to the New York Knicks is if he opts into his option for $48 million. So that means he's 36 right now. He'd be 37 with a 4-year extension. I'm not so sure about that. Maybe a 2-year extension at half this price, but we could also spend a whole episode talking about that. A major reason I want it to happen outside of the fact that I think you could contend for a title is the on-court fit. When you talk about what the New York Knicks need, it is the player. It is the archetype of Paul George. I'm not going to say the player. 6'8", 6'9" wing, can create on the deck, can score from all 3 levels, still an elite defender. I mean, Paul George might be the perfect on-court fit. We were talking about, like, you become one of the bigger teams in the NBA. 6'9" Paul George at the 2, 6'8" OG at the 3, 6'8", 6'9" Julius Randle at the 4, and 7' Isaiah Hartenstein. When you think of the team that you want to build behind Jalen Brunson, it's long, lengthy, it's strong, it's big, and it's athletic and defensive ability to switch. Paul George is that guy. Also, people like, Marshall, we won't have the three-point shooting if we take out DiVincenzo and add Paul George. That's just absolutely not true. Paul George last year shot 4.5 catch-and-shoot three-pointers a game and knocked it down at 45%. He could still get to a spot from beyond the arc and let it fly and knock it down. Pull up three-point percentage north of 35%. He could still get to the mid-range, dance, pull up, and knock it down, 45%. He still gets to the rack with the best of them, 58% right there. And he averages 3 deflections per game. He shot almost 8 three-pointers a game last year for the Clippers. He spaces the floor. He'd be a great fit on the hardwood for me. The major thing I actually am worried about is the injuries with Paul George. And maybe I'm just drinking the Kool-Aid from 2023-2024 where he ended up playing 74 games for the Los Angeles Clippers and he was able to predominantly stay healthy. Maybe I'm just hoping that he can continue to do that, even though science probably tells me no, that's not possible. But I wonder on a team where he's not the first option because Jalen Brunson is. He's not the second option because Julius Randle is. Like maybe he could save a little bit of tread on those tires and stay healthy and be able to rock and roll for the playoffs. I mean, the guy, he shoots almost 37% consistently from 3, one of the most efficient scorers. He gives you 20 on a bad night. He also can run your offense when Jalen Brunson sits down. Look at the stretch from 2020 to 2022. The guy averaged more than 5 assists. He could play point guard. He could play 2 guard. He could do everything on the floor. And I think he makes the New York Knicks championship contenders. Would you do this trade, though? Paul George for Mitchell Robinson, Bojan Bogdanovic, Deuce McBride, and 2 first-round picks. Look, if they need 3 first-round picks to do it, I would do it. If they want 4, we'll talk. But you know what? A for accept, D for decline. And for me, it's accept every single day of the week because it comes back to one thing. I'm trying to go get a ring. And if you have a top 7 of the 7 we already showed you, you're going to get it done. Like you're simply just, that team is good enough. You have to be healthy, but absolutely that team can win a championship. And I think it's the best move the Knicks can logically make this offseason to help them go toe-to-toe with the Boston Celtics. And for all the people who are going to be like, well, Marshall, he folds in the playoffs. Marshall, he can't do it. Well, you also told me the same thing about Jrue Holiday. Remember when I told you I wanted the Knicks to trade for Jrue Holiday last year, and you told me he was no good in the playoffs? Yeah, he wasn't efficient as a number 1, number 2 option for Milwaukee scoring, but when he became that 3rd or 4th option for Boston, what happened? What happens when Paul George goes from the head of the snake to the 4th option for the New York Knicks? When your role decreases and the talent overtakes it, you're going to be a highly efficient player. And he is a winning basketball player. It's just age and injuries that really concern me at this point. I'm pulling the trigger, though, because I do think that team can win the East, and I think they can win a title or 2 or 3. Make sure you are following me over on social media at @MarshallGreen_ on X. on Instagram. Hit me up over there, and let's go Knicks.